We are on Daf Vav and Alf, right? Now, oh, sorry, not Yudam Ralph. Sorry, a little wrong halacha. Hey, scratch that. We are on Daf Yudam Ralph, and I want to go back to actually before the Mishnah moment because I saw a Girsa in the Gilin Ephraim, which I should have noticed before, which I really didn't, which is Rav Huna. Starting from, well, actually not starting from there, scratch that, from Hoyel Vahu, the fourth line before the Mishnah, Hoyel Vahu be Kores. So the Gilin Ephraim changes it to Hoyel Vahu B'Horoya. Now this is talking about the halacha of Avodah Zarah by a Kohen Mashiach. By Avodah Zarah by a Kohen Mashiach is also only chayav a korban if he paskins erroneously. He makes a mistake in his psak, right? So it says here he korets, but it should be the Gilin Ephraim has a B'Horoya. So therefore you can't Lama Lifnai Lifnai. Therefore I might say, like, anytime the Kohen Mashiach makes a mistake, the blood of his korban goes inside the base in the Kodesh. That's what it says also, which is a mute, that the korban of Avodah Zarah, the blood never goes inside. Why? Because Avodah Zarah, you defiled so much that the blood work remains outside the Kodesh. Okay? So basically, going on to halacha. You're not liable on a mitzvah lo saseh, which occur in the base hamikdash. Now, what does it mean by base hamikdash? Tumas mikdash for kadoshav. Tumas mikdash kadoshav. There is no chiyuv of parhelim davar. The parhelim davar for the Sanhedrin or for the Kohen Mashiach, his korban. You don't bring about korban chatoim which concern defiling the base of mikdash. And maybe nasham toli Allah say v'lo station mikdash. You also bring nasham toli on the korban you bring if you made a mistake, if you're not sure if you committed aver or not. On Seir Losa saying the base of mikdash. Now, why are we precluding this? Isn't that pasha that you're not liable on that? So the reason is because Tumas Mikdash v'Godoshav is susceptible to carbon oil of Yered. Carbon oil of Yered is a carbon at the end of the Parashat Vayikra, which you bring, if you're rich, you bring X. Perek Beis Halacha Hey in Horayos. Perek Beis Halacha Hey. If you are rich, you bring the high animals. If you're poor, you bring birds. If you're even poorer, you bring flour. Okay? But the other things that you bring to bring carbon oil of Yered are not chiyuvei krisus. You don't get kores for them if you do it intentionally. One of those is if you take a false oath that you don't know testimony. The other is, what's the other one? False oath. The other is, what's the third one? The third one is, I forgot. What's the third one? Bitus Osayim, stam a false oath. Okay? So for those are not chiyuvei kores, right? One is to do with denying testimony, the other is to do with stam false oaths. Those are not chiyuvei kores. You don't get kores if you did it b'mezid. But tumas mikdash v'kodash, which is susceptible to carbon oil of Yered, you do get kores if you did it intentionally. So therefore, I might say it's like a regular chatos, which you do bring if you commit an aver, which you would get kores if you did it intentionally. So therefore, since that's the case, I might say that it's susceptible to the unique korbanos brought by the Sanhedrin or by the Kohen Gadol if they committed the paskin incorrectly and then committed the sin. That's the telling us it's not susceptible because it's not a true chatos. Even though it's the status of a chatos, it's not a true chatos. A true chatos is always a goat, no matter what you are, what your status is. These are not true chatos. Also, no Asham Toli. Asham Toli comes that you're not sure if you made a mistake, you committed an avera, didn't commit an avera in an area where there's a chiyuv kores and there would be a chatos otherwise. So even though there's a chiyuv kores, by tumas mikdash kadosh, if you don't bring a carbon Asham Toli if you're not sure about that. However, you are liable for the positive commands and commands of nida, not positive commands of nida. You're liable if the Kohen Gadol paskin erroneously, or the Sanhedrin paskin erroneously, and they follow through in their psak. So then, in that case, they do bring the par elim davar or the par of the Kohen Mashiach, right? Umevin Osham Talui, and you bring a questionable Osham. If you're not sure, Allah say if you committed the Avera by Nida. What's a mitzvah say which concerns Nida? Prosh mina Nida, separate oneself from one's wife when she's in Nida. Mitzvah slosa say. What's the mitzvah slosa say? Al tova Nida, not to have relations with the Nida. Now, the Gemara here really we had back in Shavuos, and this Gemara does not really concern directly. It's more or less directly our Gemara. Okay, Kana said it should be Iyavshar. That's Girsa in Shavuos. Iyavshar shloya b'yediyah b'tchila v'yediyah b'sof eli b'nasayim. Fascinating thing. Why you put it from Hashem Toli by Tumas Mikdash Kedashim says Rav Kahana? Because Hashem Toli is where you never knew whether you committed that or not. But we know in order to be chayiv Korban Olav Yori by Tumas Mikdash Kedashim, you have to have Yediyah b'tchila and Yediyah b'sof. You have to have known you were Tamei before you enter Beis Mikdash, known you Tamei after you enter Beis Mikdash, and then forgotten in the middle. So Hashem Toli is not relevant in that case. Why? Because Hashem Toli comes only if you never knew anything about the situation. So therefore, there's no Hashem Toli relevant in this situation. All right? Because Heser V'Shur Avdimei, V'Shur Avdimei said, asked for Kun Raimona. He asked him to him, V'Yekain B'Morin. He said, if that's the case, so that might be a reason why you don't bring an Hashem Toli. But why it's based in not liable to bring a korban if they made a mistake? L'mais it's a chiyuv krisus. So says the Gemara, Armalisa said, Ona bay nichnasim. The truth is, we don't even understand what Rav Kahana said. We don't know about people who enter themselves. What he said is a very strange svara. Like Moshe explains here, he says, so what if you knew before you entered the Beis HaMikdash? But then you forgot, and you never found out again. So therefore you should be susceptible to Hashem Toli. True, you knew at one point, so what? Right now, when you entered, you didn't know, and you remain in constant state of sofek. So therefore, there should be a chiv Hashem Toli. So Alachas Ka, you're right. I have no answer for you. Why basically makes an error in their psak concerning to what's the Hashem, since after all, it is an area where there is a chiv kares. Why don't they talk to bring a par helim davar? Why not have to bring the unique korban for having made a mistake in judgment? So it says, my Kedun, what was the conclusion? Rav Shul Barav Yitzhak says, mitzvahs. It's Shava. It says mitzvahs by the Paralim Davar, by the animal which is born in the case of questionable psak, and it says mitzvahs also by regular chatos. Ma mitzvah shner malal b'kvua, just like the mitzvahs brought, which is stated later on, it's by regular chatos brought on regular circumstances of a regular avera, not on the unique circumstances of tumas mikdash of gadosha. Avkan b'kvua, so to the paralim dover goes on the same things that a regular chatos goes on. Says the Gemara here, it says ve'ein chayavin. But try to so change gears a little bit better. V'lama lo tninon. So why don't we learn in our mitzvah mishnah chayavin al kol mitzvah seisha b'toicha? Says you're chayav on the mitzvah say the Beis HaMikdash. I mean, you're not chayav mitzvah say the Beis HaMikdash. You are chayav mitzvah say which has to do with nida. Anytime there's a lav, lots of times, but there's a lav, there's an asay. If you mean to tell me that at any time there's a lab which has chorus where there's a say attached to it, you're liable if you didn't keep that say. If for chatos, for paralim dover, if it's Sanhedrin, for parakoim Mashiach, the going to make some mistake. So just say, what do you mean nida? Why is it about nida? So it says the Gemara Ramatanya says, Lo asina masde elamila. We only want to mention things to the mitzvahs of separation. The mitzvahs say here are mitzvahs to separate. And the mitzvahs that say of separation by the Beis HaMikdash, where you are not chayav a paralim davar, nor is the kohen Mashiach chayav a par kohen Mashiach, because there is no real chatas in that case. But it's similar, lamila, it's similar to the concept of nida, where we were told to stay away from nidos. Hechlavida, what's the similarity? Nichnas HaMikdash tamei chayav. If you go into the Beis HaMikdash when you're tamei, you're liable. Now that's Pashut. That's like going and having bia lechatchila with a nida, going and having relations with a nida, intentionally. But this is the subtlety. The subtlety in mitzvah says the following: Nichnas tohar v'nitma. If you went in while you were tohar, by the way, we had this on Masech Shavuos, that's why it might seem familiar. Nichnas tohar v'nitma. If you went in while you were tohar, and you became tomei in the Beis Hamikdash, a dead rodent fell on you, or something like that, or a mace died there. So then, balo baruka chayev. If you went out the long way, you're chayev. Why? Because extra time in the Beis Hamikdash. B'ktsara, if you went out the short way, you're potter, right? So you have to always judge the shortest possible way to get out. Extra time makes you liable to an avera, right? Similarly, the kavasah. By nida is also such a thing. If you went to have relations with a woman who's tamei, forget it, you're chayev, right? She had relations with your wife and she's tar. Varmalon, she says in the middle, whoops, nitmetzi, I just became a nida, right? In the middle of having relations, she said, I just became a nida, right? Surprise. So bolo baruka, if he goes out the long way, chayev is liable. Uktsara potter, and if he goes out the short way, he's exempt. We're going to explain what that means. Ezu ktsara ushalo. What's the short way in this case? Right? There's only one way out. So what does it mean? The short way? Yitzan. It means he should cool. He should cool down. He should, should diminish his desires before he exits from his wife. So now the Gemara is going to explain that a little bit more. It'll become a little bit more. To those of you who don't understand that yet, just be patient for a few more lines. Let's expand that a little bit. What's mitzvah seisha manida? Amar Rabbi Yavin said, where's the pasuk itself? V'izaltem it's b'nei Yisrael mitumasam, forewarn the Jews from their impurity. Rabbi Yonasan Sholach Shol Rabbi Shimon ben Rabbi Yossi Bar Lakunya. He asked him, he asked him what seems like a klutz kasha. Where does it say in Chumash not allowed to have relations with a nida? Right? Which is explicit pasuk in the parashas, I forget where. Achrei Moser Kedoshim. What? No, it's Achrei Moser Kedoshim. But anyway, so midnight, Ubah Kippur Mizar Basei, so he wanted to throw his hat at him. The guy, he was asked the question, right? Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Yavin, Rabbi Yonasan asked the question to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yossi Bar Lakunya. So Rabbi Shimon Bar Yossi Bar Lakunya wanted to throw his hat at Rabbi Yonasan because he said him for asking such a stupid question. Amalei said, "Mila d'minukayaya amin b'knista." That which the children say in school, b'choyim every day. I know every day is probably not literal, but they learn in school. V'ad shoyel, you learn this pasuk in school. V'ad shoyeli, and you're going to ask me this pasuk. It says, "Veli shabani dastu masolo sikha v'galo servasa." It says to a woman when she's tamei because she's an Ida, you should not come close to reveal her nakedness. Amalei said, "I'm not such a klutz." Amalei said, "Lo tzricha lo da." That wasn't my question. Rather, I was asking this question. That which, I understand if you're mishamish with the tmeah, so you're liable. What about if you were having bia with a woman who's tar? Ramalon, she said, nitmesi, she said, I'm tamei, piresh miyad, if he immediately separates from her, ma'usheh chayav, what's the story? In other words, if he immediately separates her before waiting for his passion to subside, is he liable, isn't he? Amalei said the Bible actually says a davar pashti is chayav in that case. Because it says, Yitzyoso hanoah lo kibiyoso. Going out gives him the same hanoah, the same pleasure like going in. But here in the Yerushalmi it's not so pashti. Amalei said, Onavat tzrichalon. He said, both you and I have this question. In other words, I also don't know the answer. Netzeh chutz, let's go out, and let's learn about it. Nafkin v'shamin kalu d'tanya. So they went down and they heard voices saying over the following brisa. Tani kodad Chizkiah, which said over the brisa like Chizkiah, says v'shachol v'shkav ish osa. If a man lies with her, only elam misham mishimat tmei. I only know a case where he has relations with a woman who's a tamei from beforehand. Chayav, that is liable. Misham mishimatar, we have relations with a woman who's tar. V'amaloid mason in the middle, she says, whoops, I became tamei. Pirish miyad ma'u sheyeh chayav ol chayav. If he immediately exits, how do we know he's liable? Talmud Lomar, because it says, Utihini dasa, and her nida shall be, right? Shall be means it shall come upon her. And the assumption is in the middle of having relations, right? Even she spread upon him her nida in the middle of having relations. Says the Ramaya said, what she do? Rav Shmuel said, Yitzan, should cool down. Lo Yitzan, what if he didn't cool down? It's in the heat of his passion. Rabbi Yosef says, Karani love, al tikrav, al tifrosh. And what does I say about him? It says, don't come close to an Nida. It means also don't separate yourself from an Nida. It says, Kriva, Prisha. What? It says, don't come close means don't separate. How do you learn these words? That doesn't mean the same thing. So yes, it does. It's Hebrew. It's a flexible language. We have a post like that in Yeshaya. Rav Huna b'shem Rav Acho said, Kado. This one says, Homim kravelecha. Those who say, go close to yourself, meaning remove yourself from here. In other words, go close to yourself. Don't come close to us, right? So it means don't touch me because you are, here kidashticha means you are profaned. You will become made unholy. So here we see krav means to separate. So sometimes it means, al-tikra means don't separate. Remain inside of her until you cool down. Says Rabbi Zira. So Rabbi Zira says, it's a fascinating word about Rabbi Zira said, yeah, you know what you should do? You should visualize a sword, as if it's cutting through his flesh. He should see himself undergoing kares as he's having relations with her. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Zira, when everybody's such a big tzaddik that this causes them, they can have this imagery go through their mind and it cools them down. Not everybody's such a big tzaddik to go through this imagery, and not everybody's such a big tzaddik that it cools them down. So it says the Gemara, you're right. Right? Tanchum Hashem Rav Huna said, what should you do? You stick your toes into the wall. Basically, you make yourself rigid. And then you'll cool down on your own. The Bavli says you separate yourself a little bit so that you're not affected by her so much, and then you wait to cool down, and then you remove yourself from the woman. It says it says about Yosef that he put in strength his bow. So what does that mean? Rav Shmuel Nachman said Nimtachla Keshes. He had his bow, which is a euphemism for his aver, became taut. But then it relaxed. Rabbi Avun says, no, it went further than that. The Spazer Zaro, he was Moitzi Zera. He actually had an emission. But he went out from between his fingernails. I'm not sure exactly what that means. I think he means that he helped restrain himself. He held himself back from actually going through with the Maisa. But in the meantime, it was too late to stop himself from having the emission. Okay, and they were scattered the arms of the arms of his hands. So that means that it actually.
At what point are we talking about Yosef?
Huh?
At what point are we referring to Yosef?
When he was being enticed by Potiphar, by the wife Potiphar.
Well, so in the plot, it's not why it's said explicitly that he had relations with.
No. He stopped himself at the last moment. That's what it's saying. And an emission, but not relations.
But the emission it doesn't really didn't have actual intercourse.
No, he didn't have relations with her, it says here. He restrained himself as he was about to have relations with her, he restrained himself. That's what it says here.
He ran away.
It says between his hands. Between his hands.
That only deals with the emission. That doesn't deal with.
Where do you see anything more than that?
But you don't. That's the point. If we're talking about.
You hear what he's saying? I don't hear what he's saying.
In the Chumash it says he ran away.
Yeah.
That's right. You don't see any kind of sexual encounter whatsoever.
No, you do in this bracha of Yaakov. That's what Yaakov says bracha. No, yeah, but this is all Yaakov's bracha to Yosef when he says Vayafuzu Royos. So it means that he went further than that. In other words, the first it was then when he had Charot, he ran away and she grabbed onto his coat. That's the way this
Look at the story of Vayeshev, get the impression that there is a substantial difference in space between Yosef and her.
Mm-hmm.
Grab him and he's running away.
Right, that's not the way it is. But yeah, the way that Chazal is saying it, but I don't think it's going as far as the full Maisa. I don't think it's saying it. I don't see how you see that here. That's the next thing. That's coming up. That's coming up.
You have the admission that almost speaks to that there was intercourse prior to that.
Shvetzer. It's a tzazel vato. I don't hear it. Anyway, says Gemara. Let's not get stuck on this one. Says Gemara. We have much harder things to get stuck on later on. It's okay. Whatever turns you on.
Yes. I was just so surprised that the Gemara is saying that the contact is so close between the two of them. I guess that's what surprised.
Now we have the famous Gemara. I mean, it's actually probably too. Ramasa Tola Enoi. I think Rashi Chumash probably brings down this Yerushalmi Horayos. He does bring it down here.
Yeah.
No. Okay. So Rav Chumash Ramasa Tola Enoi. He lifted up his eyes. V'go ikunin shalaviv. He saw his father's visage. The Rabbi Yashaber is very fond of this Gemara. Miyad that cooled him down. Okay, so he was in heat, so to speak. He got cooled down by seeing his father's image. But the next line is not in the Bavli.
Walt Disney, the Lion movie, you see the image of his father.
Maybe they learned the Gemara. Okay. Midei Avir Yaakov. Sorry, I'm not familiar. I once saw it in the shoe store, some parts of it, but I don't remember that part. Midei Avir Yaakov. From the hands, that's Midei Avir Yaakov. That's that pasuk from the mighty one of Yaakov. Rav Avir said, "Afi couldn't show Rachel." It's interesting. He also saw Rachel. Isn't that interesting? He also saw Rachel. That doesn't appear in the Bavli.
It doesn't appear in the Rav's talk either.
Yeah, it doesn't appear in the Rav's talk. He didn't see his mother's image, right? Only his father. Okay. Vishram Ro'eh Eben Yisrael. From there, he saw the shepherd of the stone of Israel, and somehow that's a euphemism for Rachel. Okay. Next Mishnah. So much for the Agarata. We'll have a little more later on. Was not liable. Again, continuing further with what there is no Paralim Dover based in Paskins erroneously, nor Paran Kohen Mashiach if the Kohen Mashiach Paskins erroneously. Neither on a person who claims he knows no testimony, turns out he's lying, nor on the person who gives on the psak concerning false oath, nor, as we said previously on Tumas Mitash Kodasha. Now, that's a repeat, but the important thing is the next issue. Similarly, a Nasi. Now, Nasi brings a korban on his chatoim, even though he didn't paskin erroneously. A Kohen Gadol only brings a korban on his chatoim if he paskin erroneously prior to his chait, right? A Nasi brings a korban even if he didn't paskin erroneously. So but nevertheless, basically it says he's the same thing. He doesn't bring a korban oil of yored. This korban of, which if you're rich you bring X, if you're poor you bring Y, if you're destitute you bring Z. This is not shaykh by Nasi. Guess why not?
He's rich.
He's rich. That's what I was going to say. Right, he's always rich. Okay? Right? Kiva says no. He's chayv in all the korban olav yoreds, meaning 2 out of the 3, which are the Tumas Mikdash Kodashav and Bitus V'Sayim, Chutz Mishmias Kol, but not the one about Edus. Why is that? Shamelech lo dam v'lo dayan, so a king doesn't sit in judgment, nor does he judge. Lo meiv, lo minas, so nor does he testify, nor people testify against him. So he's not susceptible to court cases, and therefore he's not susceptible to that part of the korban olav yored.
What about the famous case of the Shlomo that came before the two ladies came?
So Rosh Hashanah. They couldn't, because he wasn't really a judgment there. It was like arbitration. You know, with the actual judgment, he doesn't see an actual judgment. Okay.
Let's say the king. Yeah. Let's say the king did do a show, and it wasn't a show, and then it was and then he made a mistake.
It doesn't matter. Making a mistake. Diplomatic. Right, he has right. It's Hodin Malchus. Anyway, Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi said, time of Rabbi Yisrael, logic Rabbi Yisrael is as you all said already. It says if he's impoverished and he can't bring a full carbon, he brings the lower form of carbon. As Roy lovely day daus. Some of you can become poor. Yotza Mashiach is supposed to call Mashiach Shei Roy lovely day daus. He never becomes poor. Okay. Now, on the bottom of the actually here it says you Kohen Mashiach, right? You saw that it says Mashiach, which you prepare first to the Kohen. So actually, Shai wants to change the girsa here because obviously the Mishnah was telling more about Manasi. But I'm going to learn the girsa as it is here, and I'm going to refer you to the bottom. And this was Yerushalmi Bavli. You don't have it in there. What do you do? No, this is Yerushalmi Bavli. But it says there, and this was Yerushalmi Bavli. It throws in here. In the third line from the bottom, this was Yerushalmi Shabbat, it says, Hey Tivun Vare Nasi. Hare Eno V'Dei Daus. The Gemara actually corrects itself and said, no, you meant to say a Nasi. You didn't mean to say a Kohen Mashiach. And it's interesting because the Pei Moshe here brings down the Sforah, which is a well-known Sforah, brought down the Bavli, which is probably New Shalmi, 2 back in Sanhedrin, if I recall correctly. A Kohen Gadol, once he comes to Kohen Gadol, even if he's poor, they make him rich. Right? Remember that? They give him money to make him rich. So the truth is, the interesting thing is that from that, the Pnei Moshe deduces that really a Kohen Mashiach is always rich, right? Just like a Nasi. But in fact, I want to tie in the Gemara of the Yerushalmi does not hold that way. And the Yerushalmi actually is correcting itself. A Kohen Mashiach is not necessarily rich. His brethren, the Kohanim, are supposed to enrich him, right? But they don't necessarily have. I'm going to give my money to make the Kohen Gadol rich. Give me a break, right? So therefore, Lamaisa, I would say that I don't think Yerushalmi is correcting itself and saying, no, you meant to say Nasi, not Kohen Mashiach, is saying that in fact the Kohen Mashiach is not necessarily always rich. And I think it's going to be borne out by the continuation of the Sugya here. Now, a Melech is by definition always rich, because a Melech has eminent domain over his entire kingdom, right? So therefore, it's an ownership thing. A Kohen Gadol is not inherently rich. Okay? So it says, the Gemara, Rabbi Shimon, Lakish Omer, Shimon says, V'hayas Otake. Why is the Kohen Mashiach exempt from Korban Olav Yoreh? V'yaki Yesham Lachas Mi'ela. It's got to be if he's susceptible to one of these three averos, which are false testimony, claiming he doesn't know testimony, and false oath, and kortuas mikdash kodashim. So where Shin Lakish starts this, Eshu Chayav al Kulam, somebody susceptible to the requirement on all three of those. Chayav for any one of them. Eshu Eino Chayav al Kulam, he's not liable to all three of them. Eino Chayav mikdash, he's not Chayav in any part of them. So the truth is, a Kohen Gadol, he's not susceptible to tumas mikdash and kodashim. We're going to have that later. The Gemara is going to come up with that next Mishnah. He doesn't bring a Korban Olav Yoreh by tumas mikdash kodashim. So there's custom. He's exempt from that. Even though commit the sin, I think it probably has to do with his wearing the tzitz. The tzitz is mechaper, yeah. But the Gemara doesn't say that tonight. But I think that's the issue. Tzitz mechaper. So since he's not susceptible to tumas mikdash for kodashim, so there the Korban under those circumstances, so he's not susceptible to the rest of Korban Olav Yoreh as well. Not because he's rich, but because he's not susceptible to all three. Did you want to say? Okay, so says the Gemara, Rabbi Yitzchak says me'ato, if that's the case, with the Nasi, that's because he's rich. He doesn't mean Korban Olav Yoreh. Lo yitma b'tzaras. He shouldn't come tell me with tzaras. Now, the truth is, the Sameach goes a little bit, Meshchama is a little bit nuts on this. Because he learns it's going on Kohen. I don't know exactly why. But I think it's going on King. But he learns it's going on Kohen, and never says, it's explicit pasuk in Emor that if a Kohen becomes a Mitzorah, he can't work. So of course he becomes a Mitzorah. But he wants to change the Girsa, Me'ato lo yitar b'tzaras. He shouldn't become Torah if he became Mitzorah, because it says by the Korban of Mitzorah, if you're rich, you bring X, if you're poor, you bring Y. He has to become poor. So I know, going again, he wants to say it's not talking about, it's talking about Kohen, but Lamaisa we'd say it's talking about a king, it's the same idea. Okay? So Me'ato lo yitar b'tzaras, she'ena roya v'lavo, it says here Bekalus, but that's so kind of strange. The Nuschos, Bavli, Yerushalmi and the Bavli in the bottom just says Meshena Roy Lavo lidei dalus, he can't become poor. Now it says v'chein dali dalus, he can't become double impoverished either. That's obviously a mistake. I didn't see anybody point it out, but by mitzvah there's only 2 levels. By korban olivier there are 3 levels, right? Pot, right, rich, pot, medium, middle class, and lower class. But by mitzvah there's only upper class and lower class. So I think v'chein dali dalus is the typo. Anyway, Rav Yoshe so says the Gemara. The Gemara really doesn't answer. Gemara doesn't give an answer to this question. It just leaves it difficult. But Rav Yoshe maybe that's time. Now I'm thinking about it. Maybe Chayin Dali Dalus is kind of an answer. In other words, what we're saying is the reason why Melech doesn't really fit into the syntax here, but the reason why Melech doesn't record earlier is because he's not shaykh to Dali Dalus, perhaps. Right? He's not such a rich king, but he always has enough money. But he's certainly not going to become a Dal Dalus. But by Mitzorah, he can become Dal. I don't know. Forget it. Just scratch it. It's easier to say the Gemara doesn't answer the question. Gemara asks, I was asking that he doesn't become Mitzorah. Shouldn't become Mitzorah because he doesn't have a korban Dalus. Okay, period. Rabbi Yoshe asks, Mi'ata isha lo techayeves abias mikdash. Rabbi Yoshe said if that's a woman also should be chayev on bias mikdash, right? She shouldn't be shaykh, couldn't be shaykh, and shouldn't be shaykh korban oil of yored. Why? Because she isn't shaykh in all 3. Because what one is she not chayev in? Which one is she not susceptible to? Which of the 3 korban oil of yored is she not susceptible to, Nisha? Edus, right? Because she can't testify, right? So she's not susceptible to that one, so she shouldn't be susceptible at all. Mother doesn't answer this question either. Mother rather changes its tune. Rabbi Yisrael said, time of the Rabbi Akiva. So what's the logic of Rabbi Akiva, who says that the Nasi is liable to all of them, except for Shmiya's Kol? So says the Gemara, you're not shy to one of them. So he says, Zek Korban Ara Ravanov. No. Sorry. Rabbi Akiva said all agrees that a Kohen Mashiach is exempt from all 3. So why is he exempt from all 3? Right? He said, we say here, we're trying to intimate that he should be able to susceptible to any one of them, right? So he says, I'll tell you why. A very cute reason by Kohen Mashiach. He says, Rabbi Akiva, Zek Korban Aravanov. It says that Aaron and his kids, who serve as Kohen Gadol, they bring asirid chavitin, pancakes every day. You know, the Kohen Gadol brings pancakes half in the morning, half in the afternoon. Every day, that's his own personal korban. So that korban, trust me, it's his korban. So that korban is made of a serious ephah of flour. So it says, Zek Korban Aaron Rabbanov. This is the korban of Aaron and his kids, which is not serious ephah. This one, Zek Korban Aaron Rabbanov, Zehu maybe, Veno maybe a serious ephah, because he can't bring another one. What does that mean? The korban of your bidale dalus. If a person is absolutely impoverished, the korban of yored is a measure of flour. And what the pasuk is saying is that the Kohen Gadol only brings one type of serious sefer, not the other one. Only the one type of serious sefer, not the other one, must mean that Kohen Gadol is exempt from korban of yored. Now here you see clearly the point I made about the Yerushalmi before, that the Yerushalmi holds the Kohen Gadol legally can become impoverished. And theoretically, he should be trying to be bringing a serious sefer. The only reason why it doesn't bring a serious sefer is because it says Zek Korban Aaron Ubanav. What's the korban of Aaron and kids? The Asir Seifa, only the pancakes every day, not the korban of Yored. So if it's exempt from one of the levels, he's exempt from all of korban of Yored. Okay? Rabbi Zira Baikun Rabbi Yasa, Rabbi Zira has very Yasa. This is a very strange question. It says, Ve'enu maybe Nadava? Can't he bring a Nadava, a mincha as a volunteer korban, where he's not allowed to ever bring a mincha, other than these pancakes? Or Melissa said, yes, Chovahu Eino maybe. He can't bring a chayva, the davu maybe. Of course, you understood I meant that. He doesn't have any other obligatory korban of a serious sefer. Says Markini Masnisa, this is the way to read our Mishnah. Shamelch lo meiv lo minima. So the din is not relevant. the fact that king doesn't judge or cannot be judged is nice, but it's not relevant to our mission, because our mission is talking about the korban brought, exclusively concerning testimony issues, and therefore whether you can judge or not be judged is not relevant. Okay? Halacha zayin. Call mitzvah Shabbat Torah, any mitzvah in Torah, chayovin, I was doing a kores, any mitzvah Torah where you're liable if you didn't intentionally kores. Or shikos chatos, you unintentionally liable to chatos. Hayochid may be kisba, if an individual, regular guy did it, he brings a kisba, a top yidaf for those at the Vilna Shas, he brings a kisba, a lamb, female, sira, a goat, female. Nasi, if it's a nasi, sawyer, he brings a goat, male. Umashiach Beistin, the Kohen Mashiach, the Kohen Gadol, and Beistin Mevim Par, they bring a bull. Uvavodah Zarah, if the sin was Avodah Zarah, Hayachid Vanasi, the individual and the king, Vamashiach and the anointed Kohen, what? The anointed Kohen, Nasi means the king. It's going to come up later on, next paragraph. What? Nasi is in bad shape, but that's the story. There are plenty of them, unfortunately. Yeah, all of the northern kingdom. Nasi Vayachi, so, Nasi Vamashiach Mevin Seira, the Nasi and the Mashiach, they bring a female goat, who based in, if the basin passes erroneously, and Am Yisrael worships Avodah Zarah, V'soyer, they bring a bull and a goat. Par l'ola, the bull as an ola, V'soyer l'chatos, and the goat as a chatos. Oshem Toli, the question with the korban you bring, if you're not sure if you're committed Avera or not, is Hanasi Vayochi Chayovim, the Nasi and the Yochid, an individual and the king are liable, based in Mashiach based in B'turim, and don't have any more. It has a lot of kavdim. And then the Kohen Mashiach and the Nasi are exempt from Oshem Toli. Oshem Vadi, the definite Oshem, so on 5 different situations, on Me'ilah, on certain types of theft, on the Nazir, on the Mitzayra, a Shiv Charufa, that, the Oshem Vadi, is brought also by Hayachid, Vanasi, Mashiach, Yavin, all 3 are liable, even Kohen Mashiach, who based B'tur and based are exempt. Al Shmias Kol, on the Korban Olav Yored, repeating what we said in the last Mishnah, the Korban Olav Yored, which is brought for not claiming he didn't know testimony, and Bitui, Svasaim, and false oath, the two and being Matamis, things in the base of Mikdash, base and B'tur and base are exempt. Hayachid, Vanasi, Mashiach, Chayovin. The individual, the Nasi, and the Mashiach are all liable in Korban Olav Yored. Oshein Kohen Gadol Chayav al Tumas Mikdash Kadosh of Rabbi Shimon, except Kohen Gadol is exempt from Tumas Mikdash the Kadosh of according to Rabbi Shimon. Now it's not like Rabbi Yosef Glili, of course, in the previous Mishnah, right? Rabbi Yosef Glili in the previous Mishnah said that the Kohen Mashiach is exempt from all 3, right? Rabbi Shimon says he's exempt only from Tumas Mikdash Kadosh, right? Diva Rabbi Shimon. Mayim Avin, what do they bring? Korban Olav Yored. And when they do bring Korban Olav Yored, they bring Korban Olav Yored. Rabbi Lezer Hanasi may be seer. Rabbi Lezer says the Nasi, he doesn't bring a female goat, he brings a male goat, which is the Nasi's Korban for any Aveir which he commits. Unlike an individual who brings a female goat or lamb, he brings specifically a male goat, and that's true even as the substitute for a Korban Olav Yored. Amar is going to discuss his opinion. So it says when it says Nefesh, and this is talking about by Oshem Toli, the Oshem you bring when you're not sure you can be Naver or not. So it says Nefesh l'Rabos Nasi, that includes the Nasi. It says more, well, if that's the case, if it's Nefesh, Yerba Mashiach, Kohen Gadol is also a person, right? Shouldn't he? Then he should also bring this Oshem Toli. So the Gemara says, you know what? Forget that. Scratch that drasha. Let's try another drasha. B'cheta b'shkaga, with its sin in questionable circumstances, when it was unintentional. Ashu b'shigas ma'isa. It means when only the entire issue is the sin itself. Yotza Mashiach is supposed to claim Mashiach. She'enam b'shigas ma'isa. It's not just the sin itself. Because the Kohen Mashiach only brings in a korban, and prior to having committed the sin, he paskined erroneously and permitted himself to do the sin. So therefore, he's not Shayat Oshem Toli, which comes only and exclusively on a question of erroneous act. Says Gemara, Rebbe, what about Rebbe Duamar who said, Moshiach b'shigas hamaisu, that there is one case where Kohen Gadol brings a korban even on an avera without a prior erroneous psak. What's that case? The case of avodah zora. So according to Rebbe, Duar Moshiach b'shigas hamaisa, why is he not bringing an Osham Toli? So Asher who b'shigas hamaisa l'chol dvarim? No. He who always brings a chatos on the improper deed in of itself, he brings an Osham Toli. That's what Mashiach is supposed to come. Mashiach, by all other years besides Avodah Zarah, it's not sufficient for him to commit the act. He also has to actually pass erroneously, and therefore he's not Shayat Osham Toli. Says the Gemara, Nefesh Rabbas Anasi v'Mashiach. Says more Nefesh, which it says by Osham Vadai, that Nefesh includes a Nasi and a Mashiach that they bring a Kosham Vadai. So no, wait a minute. Ochatomer L'Ravos is a Nasi. Oh, by Osham Vadai, at least initially, he wanted to say that Nefesh only includes the Nasi. The Kohatam by L'Ravos Hashir, he said it includes the Kohen Mashiach as well. Says more Kachatas Kasham. Says more, you know what, you're right, scratch that. Let's do another drosha. Says more Kachatas Kasham. It says that Machata. It says that the Osham is like a Chatas. So with that Machatas Mechaper Merekas, just like the Chatas is Mechaper and completes the Kapara for the sin. Af Osham, so to the Osham, which a Kohen or Mashiach brings is one which is Mechaper Mark, which atones and completes the atonement. Yotz Osham Toli as opposed to Osham Toli Shum Mechaper Mashar, which atones only partially until he finds how to commit that or not. That a Kohen Mashiach does not bring. Okay? So it's only Osham, which is like a Chatas, as opposed to Osham Toli, which is not like a Chatas. Says the Gemara, Kinimas Nisa, is where I rate the Mishnah Shaita, so it does change the gears here. I'm going to learn it like the gears in front of us, like the Pneumotion learns the gears in front of us, and so does the Sameach. Says the Gemara, Kinimas Nisa, way to rate our Mishnah. Opposite than the way our Mishnah reads. And by the way, the Ravid parts, Machlir is Rambam and Ravid, whether we pass in this way. The Ravid passes like the Yerushalmi in front of us. The Rambam does not. Rambam, I guess, agrees to try to so change the gears here, but again, as I said, we're not going to do it. She'en kohen gadol chayev al tumas divrei kol. V'nasi al shmias kol divrei Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon's unique shita was that a nasi is exempt from the korban al shmias kol. Why is that again? Because he agrees with Rabbi Akiva in the previous Mishnah of the issue of a nasi obviously doesn't go and testify in court. Okay? Says Rabbi Yochanan said, it says, Mina mikdosh lo yitzeh, what's the logic? That where do we see a nasi is not chayiv to us mikdosh kosher? It says that a Kohen becomes an Avel, he shouldn't dash in the base, shouldn't lead the base on mikdosh, Kohen Gadol specifically, sorry. Shouldn't go, v'lo yichal, should not desecrate. Now, from this reading forward, though, I'm not sure exactly how, that the Kohen, and there also mentions Tumah in that parsha. Now, you ought to say, even if he went out, Ein Machal, he doesn't desecrate. Okay? Someone must learn the extra language. I don't know exactly how to do it, but even if he went out, he doesn't desecrate the, meaning even if he came Tomei, he didn't, he doesn't, because he does not Machal. In other words, he was not supposed to leave the base of Midrash Novel and go to Levaya. Even if he went to Levaya and became Tomei and he came out of base of Midrash, not Machalo, meaning that it's not considered to be a full Aveira, having then been Matam and Midrash Kodosha. Says more, wait a minute, if that's the case, you're going to make a drush like that. Now again, I'm not sure exactly how the drush works. But in any way, he says, once you make such a drush, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Yener, and Rabbi Boon, Bar Kahana, Makshi, they ask, it says, a Kohen should not take, a Kohen Gadol should not take an Amona and a Grusha and a Chalol and a Zoina. So it says, right? At the same time, a drush should apply grammatically to this. If he took them, he shouldn't be Machal his kids. Right? So it sounds like, but if he did take it, shouldn't be, it's not Machal. It can't be. We know he's Machal's kids if he did that. So it says, what am I could do? Taka. So why do we say Kohen Gadol is exempt to us from the Drashim? Obviously, the drush is not working for us. Amar Chizkiah said, this is in this week's parsha. It says in Chukas, if for some reason Matame Mikdash, his soul is eradicated from the Kohol. And I mentioned this last night in the Kohela Shir. This is the only time in the Torah it says Kores from the Kol. All the other creases in Sefer Vayikra mitoch ha'am. Here it says Nirchus ha'nefesh ha'im mitoch ha'kohol. It's unique koretz. So the question is what exactly that means theologically. What?
That's the you said about the difference between kol and adas.
But here it's kol and am. Here it's a different thing. So then we're actually darshans. The more darshans the kol here. I did not know this Yerushalmi when I said shiur last night. Otherwise I could have put down this drasha, which would have been far less exciting. So it says the more Asher Korban Shavel Kol. Who gets koretz for Tumas Mikdash Kadosha, and therefore has been a korban or olav yored if they did it unintentionally? Somebody who has a parallel korban to the rest of the congregation. He's always, part of the kol. Yatsa Mashiach, as opposed to Kohen Gadol, Shelo Shaver Korban Ol Kol. He doesn't normally bring the same korban as the rest of the congregation, so if he's not shaykh to the korban olav yored either. Okay? So that's the dash where it says, Nichsa Mitoch HaKol, that only people who are in the kol are liable to this korban olav yored, not a Kohen Gadol. Hey, see when there's the kasha, Rei Nasi, what about a Nasi? Lo Shaver Korban Ol Kol. He doesn't mean the same korban as the congregation. Yet, nevertheless, he brings the korban olav yored. Says Marashavi Yom Kippur, Yom Kippur he gets atoned for with the rest of the congregation. Kohen Gadol is his own kapor, and Yom Kippur his own animal, his own bull. Kohen Gadol gets the nasi gets kapor together with the goat lazalzo, same as everybody else, right? So they ask the question, well, what about Harei Echav Kohanim? Lo Shavu Yom Kippurim. The other Kohanim, besides the Kohen Gadol, they should be exempt from korban olav yored by Tumas Mikdash Kodesh, because in Yom Kippur they have a separate korban. There are 3 korbanos in Yom Kippur, right? There are 3 viduim we have in Yom Kippur. For the Kohen Gadol separately, for the other Kohanim separately, and for Bnei Yisrael separately. So they should be exempt from korban olav yored. So says the Gemara, nevertheless, Shavuot Shayim Moshe Shana, the rest of the year they're equivalent. I mean, the rest of the year they bring the same korban everybody else does. I mean, individual korban, right? But they bring a female goat or female lamb. They don't bring a male goat like the nasi. Says Yehuda Rashon said Shavu Matandam Mechutz is another equation which we're looking at, which is that the blood is sprinkled outside the kodesh. Or it's by all korbanos. Besides the Kohen Gadol's, the blood is sprinkled outside. He said, no. You know what makes them equivalent? What makes the other Kohanim? No, I'm sorry. Shal Matan Chutz means except for the Kohen Gadol, all other blood is sprinkled outside. So that was right. Rabbi Yechiel said, Lo Rabbi Lezer Elamim Pnei Krisus. Rabbi Lezer in our Mishnah, who said a nasi brings a korban olav yored. He also. It's not because he brings the same korban as everybody else. He doesn't. He brings a different koretz, but he's liable for koretz as everybody else. The Kohen Gadol at Tumas Mikdash Shloshim is even exempt from koretz. He doesn't get the same koretz as anybody else. It seems, which is a tremendous klishmor they're going to reject it. But that's what it sounds like right now, right? But the nasi gets koretz same like everybody else, so therefore it's not the korban olav yored the same as everybody else. Says more Rabbi Yoshia say boy yes me'ato afilu. Now everybody changes gears. Everybody goes crazy here. They don't know what's going on. The next few lines. So Lamaisa, I'm going to give you my own spin on this, and no guarantee I'm correct, but I change it less than almost anybody else. Okay, so therefore I like it better. Besides, I said it. I'm going to say it. It says me'ato afilu should be bekohen. Okay, it doesn't say bekohen there. But on the bottom, if you look at Nuschos Yerushalmi Horayos, it says me'ata filu kain b'kviyah. Now I think that kain is really supposed to be kohen. Okay, so look at the Nuschah of the Yerushalmi, which is in the Bavli, which is more meduyik Nuschah. I'm changing the kain to kohen. So the question is, a kohen also gets what I just asked you. Umar is asking. A kohen also gets koretz with Tumas Mikdash Kodesh. He doesn't be shaying, he might be exempt korban olav yored, but he doesn't amaze it, he gets koretz. Even if he wears the tzitz, he still gets koretz, right? So it says more b'kvua. The kvua is actually the answer. The Gemara says, no, you're right. A kohen actually gets koretz the same as anybody else, but nevertheless, what's different is that the Kohen never brings a chatos on a koretz, unless he also paskined erroneously, right? You're right, in the Kore's penalty it'd be the same. What I mean is that in the korban which he brings on the Kore's, he's different. A Nasi gets Kore's, and if he did a B'shogeg, he brings a korban. A Yisrael gets Kore's, if he did a Mason, and if he did a B'shogeg, he brings a korban. It happens to be a different type of korban. One is a female, one is a male, but he brings the korban. According to Mashiach, if he did a Tekshi, he gets Kore's. If he did on a Tekshi, does he bring a korban? No! Unless he also paskin erroneously. So we're saying is that korban on the krisus is qualitatively a different type of korban. That's why the Kohen Mashiach doesn't bring korban oil of a yared, but a nasi does. Okay? So it says more. Rabbi Yehuda said, "Mizbar savar Rabbi Yeshua shneka mikol parsha." Where the Gemara says Rabbi Yeshua is kasha. What's Rabbi Yeshua going to do with this kasha? Rabbi Yeshua didn't give the answer. Rabbi Yeshua says, he asked kasha. He said, they all get the same chorus, right? They all get the same chorus, right? So according to Rabbi Yeshua, Al-Taka does that's the case, obviously he says that krisus is not the common theme between a Nasi, that he should bring korban leviore to Rabbi Eliezer, and everybody else. There must be another common theme, right? What's the other common theme? Because it says, Rabbi Eliezer says that Nasi does bring a korban leviore, right? Oh no, sorry. Rabbi Eliezer said, sorry. The question is like this. The question is, wait, let me just make sure I get it right. I don't like what I wrote here. Just erase this. Okay, not the first time. Says Mar, said, Rabbi Yeshua shneka b'kol parsha. So does Rabbi Yeshua say that the Nazis are proof for the entire parsha? Again, because his korban is different, and he doesn't have this answer. Know that we look at, the parallel that there is a qualitatively a korban on Koresh in and of itself. So how does he do? What does he do with Rabbi? What does he do with the Nasi? Says the Gemara, fascinating answer. Says the Gemara, Elokehediot Usher of it lay Rabbi Eliezer. He holds that he makes that a Nasi is like a rich commoner. That's the definition of a Nasi according to Rabbi Eliezer. Isn't that an amazing thing? If you look back at Rabbi Eliezer says a Nasi may be sawyer, right? Said back at the end of the Mishnah. So it says a Nasi is like a rich commoner. And since it's like a rich commoner, what it means is like this: the rich commoner in what?
It just brings the
Yeah. So the thing is like this, right? So in the pasuk itself, I'm coming to that. In the pasuk itself, in Vayikra, it says, where's the Vayikra? Hey, it says. One second. Pasuk itself, Vayikra. Hey. The rich guy, right? He brings nekeva minatzon kizbo sirasizim lechatos, which is the same thing any commoner brings by any chatos, right? So Rabbi Eliezer holds that a nasi, because Rabbi Eliezer and the Chacham say in our Mishnah that a nasi brings the same Kisbor Seira like anybody else but korban oil of the urine. So what does Rabbi Eliezer Taka do? Rabbi Eliezer says, no. You can look at things like this, you look at things like this. And the Chacham are looking like at a korban oil of the urine as a separate korban with depth to it. It has Oshir, Dalus, and Dali Dalus. And if a Nasi brings, he brings, like an Oshir, which is Kisbor Seira. Rabbi Eliezer says, vis-a-vis a Nasi, it's as if those two lower levels don't exist. Now remember, we said in the previous Mishnah, by a reason to pater Nasi altogether. But this Mishnah is not saying that, right? Vis-a-vis a Nasi, those two lower levels don't exist, right? So if they don't exist, so vis-a-vis him, this carbon already turned into what? A regular chatas. If it turns into a regular chatas, what does the Nasi bring in lieu of a regular chatas? A soyer, a male carbon, right? By a regular chatas, the Nasi brings a regular, instead of the female carbonis, which commoner brings, he brings a male carbon. If you slice an oil of a urine from its two lower levels, and you say every ashir, every melech is by definition only a hedyot ashir, that means the two lower levels don't exist for him. So that Rebbe Eliezer Tainus makes sure that he brings dafka soyer. Okay? So that's so it's an interesting svara. I don't know if I the one is going to reject it, but that's what he holds. What?
If he holds that he's just like a regular rich commoner,
Yeah.
so then it should be the other way. That he should, if anything, if anybody holds that he should have the most expensive one, it should be him.
Right, no, but the most expensive one for a commoner is a kisbar seira, right? But for a nasi, it's a male, it's a sawyer.
But he's the man.
Yeah, but it's not a question of money at that point. It's a question just of type. It's the most expensive type, just male instead of female. That's all. Okay? So that's the saying here. So Rabbi Eliezer. So says Gemara, wait a minute. So says Gemara, you know, and run and said, that doesn't work. Because then why did Rabbi Eliezer Dafka say that Tubas Mikdash v'Kadoshav a Nasi brings a sawyer? On every carbon oil of a urine should bring a sawyer. So it's what to say the cutting off. Let's say he's always stuck at the highest level, and that's why you can lieu of the Kizbor's era, he brings the sawyer. So just be true about Tumas Mikdash v'Kadoshav, like Rabbi Eliezer said in our Mishnah, rather it should be true of all three types of carbon oil of the urine. He should always bring the male carbon and not the female carbonus, right? So it says, so therefore they reject this for of Hediot Osher, right? Says the Mara, Tani. We learned, it says you did Tani, but I think it should say Tani. Tani, lo nelchu Rebbe Eliezer Chaim l'shmias kol v'abitis v'sayim she'enu me'avi Yisrael l'sira. Actually, part of the question. No, it's part of the question. The Tani, lo nelchu Rebbe Eliezer Chaim l'shmias kol v'abitis v'sayim she'enu me'avi Yisrael l'sira. Right? Aman elchu tu'asik l'shlosh. Rebbe Eliezer mer hovi kares lo me'enu me'avi Yisrael l'sira. Says the Lord, you know what? You're right. Takakash and Rav Nuna. And we go back to the reason Rabbi Yochanan gave above. Rabbi Yochanan says, and this is interesting, now it's actually more refined a little bit, which is, so Taka, what's Rabbi Eliezer Svar? Why is it only by Tumas Mikdash Kadashav and not by the other two? Because Tumas Mikdash Kadashav is the only one of the three which has a kares attached to it. So since it has a kares attached to it, that's what makes it similar to a Chatas Kavua. And that's why he holds that in that case, the Nasi, and only in that case does the Nasi bring a sawyer. Okay? So again, he's saying, going back to the for refining a little bit, that there are really a couple of elements involved here. That what makes it, it's not the fact that there's kares. It's the fact that it's a kares, and he's an ashir hedyot, right? It's like a hedyot ashir. And it's the same animal which a commoner would bring for any chatos. All those factors together make it vis-a-vis him as if it's a regular chatos, for which instead of the female animal, it brings the male animal. As opposed to the other two types of carbon oil of urine, the other two types of carbon oil of urine, they are not chiyuv krisus. And therefore, if a nasi does bring the carbon in those cases, he brings the regular Levi Yoreh carbon, not his unique substitute carbon, which only comes in a case where there's a kares involved. Okay, so that's why it doesn't bring that one. So it says, there's a chorus issue. Why do you bring a sawyer? Why do you bring a seira, not a sawyer? And why is it sawyer? You should bring dafka sawyer. So they asked them this. They asked Rabbi Eliezer and said, "Wait a minute. Hare Mashiach v'avodah zarah." I'll prove to you you're wrong. Mashiach v'avodah zarah. Hare eino mevi. It should be par el seira. They said that a Mashiach in avodah zarah. Right? It's not necessarily true. A Mashiach paskins by avodah zarah the wrong way. Right, and even according to Rabbi, even out of the Psak. So he doesn't bring a par, which is his regular korban, korban for Elim Dover. Rather, he brings a seira like everybody else. So to here, the Nasi, you know what? Could be that this is like a par by a Kohen Mashiach by avodah zarah. Just like Kohen Mashiach by avodah zarah, he does bring like everybody else brings. So to a Nasi by carbon oil of Yored, he does bring it, everybody else needs. In other words, there is precedent, Rabbanan said to Rabbi Eliezer, there are precedent for cases in which the Nasi does bring the same thing as everybody else, and which somebody who normally has different carbon brings the same as everybody else. That's by Kohen Mashiach vis-a-vis avodah zarah. So to the same thing here, by the Nasi vis-a-vis the case of the Nasi vis-a-vis the case of carbon oil of Yored. Okay, let's just go a little bit further. Kohen Mashiach shechata. Kohen Gadol sinned. And then he was kicked out of office. Okay, not because of his sin, right? Necessarily. The Nasi shechata, Nasi who sinned, and then they kicked him out of office.
They kicked him out of office.
What?
They kicked him out of office.
Who? Kohen Gadol? No, he retired. Old age. The king abdicated in favor of his son. And so Kohen Mashiach may be par. So Kohen Mashiach, after it's over, he still brings a par, because the Kohen Gadol, once he leaves office, he's still a Kohen Gadol. A Nasi may be sawyer, and a Nasi, once he leaves office, is still a sawyer, right? What? I made a mistake. This is a case where they sinned while they're still in office, and then they passed out of office. So it's, but I said afterwards is wrong. I said a Kohen Gadol once leaves office is still a Kohen Gadol, that's right. But a Nasi once he leaves office is no longer a Nasi. Look at the next line of the Mishnah. If it's sinned after he left office, or Nasi Sharvin goes to Chakachota, right? Kohen Mashiach may be part because he still remains a Kohen Gadol. But once a Nasi is out of office, he's just a regular guy. Okay?
Why is that? The reason why Kohen Gadol is because
it's not a power-based position. Right. Once a president is only based on his power. Right? This is Kohen Gadol shechata. This is Gemara we actually have back in Sanhedrin, slightly different version, but here it's more or less the same. A few differences. Is a Kohen Gadol shechata. A Kohen Gadol will sin. Malkin so we flog him. But he keep him Kohen Gadol. Ramana says like Clinton, right? You don't impeach it because he said. Ramana said, "See, it says Ki Nezer Shem Mishchas Elokav Olav Ani Hashem." How do we know that? Because it says, because the crown of the oil of his anointment is upon him. I am God. Kivyochel, it's as if to say, Mani Biglosa, just like I'm always a big person, says Hashem. Afarim Biglosa, so to our remains great, even if he sinned. Ramana says, Kadoshi Eloch. He remains holy to you. Just like I'm always holy, so the art always remains holy. Rabchina the scribe, Rishim said, Kohen Mashiach sinned, even though by his dini moment we judge him in front of his 23. For Malchus we judge him only in front of 3. Why is that? Or to keep his embarrassment at a minimum. Okay? To say you're going to judge it with 23 like you judged the Imamnas, also then his being uplifted to a base of 23, his real is degraded for him because more people witness his vlogging.
Well, people are going to know about it anyway.
No, but not going to see it. There's a difference. Nasi shechata, if a Nasi sin, Marcus or basin shoshloish, you flog him in a basin of 3. Says Gemara, Ma machzirle, do we put him back in his office? Says the Gemara, Amar, Rabbi Chagai said, Moshe. They said, it says muta, but should be the way it says it's just Moshe. Now it seems in the Yerushalmi, it seems that Rish Lakish actually somehow said this over. Name Rabbi Chagai, something like that, because you'll see Rish Lakish will get in trouble for saying this. Moshe, ein machzirin lei. We don't put him back. Why? It should be to cut alone, because he's going to kill the people who flogged him. Once you flog him, stays out of office. Sham Rabbi Nasiya v'kasher. Rabbi Nasiya was the Nazi time Rish Lakish heard this statement, and he knew that there was some sort of allusion to him, and he was upset. Like he was too tough a Nazi. Because he got upset. Shach Kutayin, so he sent him a soldier, Lemikpat Shimon Lakish, to Chaper Shimon Lakish. So Shimon Lakish fled, Bedad Magdola, to a place called Magdola, so say Bedad Krachitaya, to a place called Krachitaya. So Rabbi Yochanan Beis Vada. So Rabbi Yochanan meantime went to Beis Medrash. Without Rish Lakish, who was out of town in hiding. So Rabbi Nasiya Beis Vada. Rabbi Nasiya went to Beis Medrash as well. Amalei, so he said, Rabbi Nasiya said Rabbi Yochanan was being silent. Amalei, Lama leis mori, Amalei mila derais. Why is my master not saying over Torah? So Chari tapach b'chad. So he started clapping with one hand, like this. And he thought, Rabbi Nasiya, that he wants to paskin halach and Hilchos Shabbos about clapping on Shabbos. So Amalei, so he said, to clap with one hand. Amalei laughed, so Rabbi said, no, you don't. Ilo bein Lakish lo. In lo bein Lakish lo. If I don't have bein Lakish, it's like clapping with one hand. It's not like real clapping. So Amalei lo, it seems like it's redundancy. And we said Amalei, so he says, it should be anamefakha. Where is he open up? In other words, where is he closed up? Where is he hiding? That's really what it means. Okay? Amalei said, "B'dana Magdola." He's hiding in Magdola. Amalei, so Yunus said, "Fine. Anavat navikan me. Let's go out towards him. I'll make peace." Shalach Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Shimon Lakish, Tapi the base of average. Rabbi Yochanan said, "Meshurish Lakish." I feed l'cha mila the rights to prepare for yourself some toicha to say. The Nasiya navikan mach Nasi is coming to see you. So Reish Lakish came to greet them. Mar, and he said, your example, Rabbi Nasiya, Dami Lebreachan, it's like your creator. In other words, he gave him praise. He said, when Hashem came to redeem the Jews from Egypt, lo shach, lo shliach, he didn't send an agent, lo malch, nor angel, Kodesh Baruch Hu ba'atzmo, himself. The Chsiv, it says, I'll pass. V'lo na'idat elohu v'cho durgan delay. He went with all his retinue. Yeah. Asher holach Elokim in Ksiv Khan doesn't say he went. Elo asher hochu Elokim. He took other people with him. You brought Rabbi Yochanan. Amar lei, so Rabbi, so he was appeasing the Nasi. Amar lei, so Rabbi Nasiya said to Rish Lakish, Ma cham semeim alone adam. So why'd you say this thing which got me upset? This thing about, well, if you put the Nazi back, he's going to kill the people who flogged him. Obviously, I took it as an instigation. Normally, so he said, Matun Sarvin, what do you think? Because I'm afraid of you, I refrain from teaching the Torah of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In other words, I have to teach, right? In other words, this halacha, even if you infer that it's negative and a negative reflection upon you, nevertheless, I have to say what I have to say. And the Chasam Sofer brings parallels to this, but not for now. So eventually says, Amar Rav Shmuel Yitzchak, it said, where we have such a thing, which we're allusion to this, it says, Al B'nai, Eli says to the children, don't do this kilo tova shmua. The rumors are not good about what you're doing, Ma'avirim Hashem, which the nation of God are spreading. So says tomorrow, from this we derive Ma'avirim, so that if they're bad rumors, you spread them. Of course, have to be substantiated. But if there's, if the shoe fits, wear it. Rabbi Nasiya, I can't refrain from saying Torah, even if it impinges upon you, and if it happens to be true what they say about you, that you're too strident, those are the breaks. Okay, let's just get on base, because it's very easy, the next Gemara. They sinned before they were appointed, and then they were appointed, right? So what carbon would you think they bring? Regular, right? That's what you think. Harelu Kedju. That's what Tanakama says. Rishonim says, depends when they found out about it. They came where before they became anointed. They're liable to the korbanos of commoners. They found out once they became anointed, they're exempt altogether. This is a shocking thing. I was going to explain why. Vezu and Ezo Nasi, who was a Nasi? Zamelch, it's the king. It says Nasi is somebody who's committed one of the things in the mitzvahs of Hashem negatively, and Nasi is Nasi is somebody who has nobody over him but God himself. Ve'ezu Mashiach, what's the Kohen Mashiach? It's one specifically anointed with the oil of anointment. The Lo Amru begodim, not the ones who had extra clothing. To what time Jewish history did they still have the oil of anointment for the Kohen Gadol? His first mitzvah, not till the end, but till the times of Yoshio put it into Geniza. Okay, so the whole episode of Kohen Mashiach only applied in first base of Mikdash, not the second base of Mikdash, right? The Lo Amru b'goyim, not just the guy with extra clothing, is Kohen Gadol, like the second base of Mikdash. What is the difference between these two types of Kohen Gadol? Ela para Kohen Komitz is the only difference. Whether he has a kalocha paralim davar or not, where he erroneously made a psak and followed through in the psak. There's no difference between a currently serving Kohen and a retired Kohen, a Kohen Gadol emeritus. The problem except that the bull Yom Kippur can only be done by a serving Kohen Gadol. Yeah, retired. Okay? And also the pancakes every day are only bought by the currently serving Kohen Gadol. Both the Kohen Mashuach and a Kohen Rumah Begodim, whether it's anointed by oil or by having additional clothes, they are both shoving Avos Yom Kippur, and they both can serve on Yom Kippur. Basula both can only marry a Basula. The Simona for both forbidden to marry an Amora. They both cannot go to Levites, even with their close relatives. Lo Purim, they cannot rip or tear their clothing or grow their hair long. When they die, the unintentional murderers come back from the Yermiklot. The Chevraya is the Tanashim. Why when these people claim Gadol or the Nasi found out about the Aver only after they became went promoted? Why do they not bring a korban? Shagdulim Chaperes. When you become a Rav or a Rosh Hashiva or a Rebbe, the tzaros of becoming the leader are enough to be mechaper. You don't need korbanos besides it. That's what I state, right? Okay. Yes. So, I'm Rav Yossi, Nidon Hashem Sofa. I'm Rav Yossi, She'ein Cheta V'Dios Hashem. Rav Yossi said a technical reason. Because his chet and his awareness are not at the same time, the same status. Ma'am Afkene, what's between the two opinions? Reish of the Pirka. The case of the beginning of our Perik. The case of beginning of our Perik is a case of, what? A Kohen Mashiach who sinned and then dropped down a notch. So if you hold Gdula Mechaperes, though, going down a notch is not Mechaper, right? So therefore you actually would still have to bring the carbon the carbon as was your status at the time that you sinned. But or as is your new status, whatever. But if you hold the issue is that you change status, so then the change status of itself, whether going up or going down, exempts you from the carbon. Okay? Says the Gemara, again, this is the case. Kohen Mashiach will sin and then he went down. Kohen Mashiach may be par, but Nasi may be soyer. So, if only Gedula changes it, so then in this case where there was no Gedula, so he continues to bring the unique carbon. But the change of status changes, so in this case he'd be potter. Chatu b'safik. What if they made it, they sinned a questionable sin before they became ascended? So he said that the ascent puts you up. Definitely, it's a mechaper also on a safek. He's exempt from Noshon Toli. But Madamar ain't chet v'diyosu shavin. He says that the issue is whether you knew at the same time you committed the sin. Take the word ein. The Gilon Ephraim takes it out. Chet v'diyosu shavin. Did he ever become aware of whether he committed the sin or not? No. Otherwise, you're going to be bringing Nosham Toli. So therefore, Yediyah is not affected by Nosham Toli. So if that's the case, he doesn't. There is no change in the nature of his korban, and therefore he would always bring the Nosham Toli even after you got to kick the ladder to being a higher level. Again, if you hold that it's not a void of Gedul Mechaperes. Chatar Shlonismanu, they sinned before they were appointed. And Mishnismanu and then they were kicked out again. So Rabbi said they really sinned 3 times. Once before, once during, and once after. 3 sins, right? He holds that the greatness atones. Keeper Gdula al Rishon. The Gdula atones for the first sin. The Chayiv and the second sin which you committed while you were a Nasi. Shisha and the third sin you commit after you're out of this use. Who says that the issue is whether the chait and awareness occur at the same time. There's a line missing here according to Gilad Ephraim to say Chayiv should live on the first one. Because when did you find out about the first one? Only after they kicked you out of office again. So that means you're chayiv on the first one because you found out about it. By the time you found out about it, you're already out of office already. And you're chayiv, of course, on the third one, which happened when you were out of office already. And you're exempt on the second one, which occurred when you were in office, because by the time you found out of it, you were out of office. Okay? They sinned on a korban oil of Yored issue. The Bishmias Kopitus assigned to us and then they became a Nasi, right? Manashum Shagdul Mechaperes. You can't do Mechaperes because Mechaper also korban oil of Yored issues. However, according to the other opinion that has to do with a change in status, so korban oil of Yored doesn't necessarily make a difference because korban oil of Yored, there's no change in status from the time when you're a Hedyo to the time when you are a Melech, right? It's only by a Chatos that you change, but not by korban oil of Yored, except according to Rabbi Lezer, by 206 I learned the end of the previous paragraph. Okay, we'll stop here for tonight. I'll pick up Mir Shem here tomorrow night. I'm around the Tanya.